Hi, this is Simon Hodgkinson. Together with Jeremy Gislason and today's special guest, we'll be discussing the powerful marketing strategy known as mass control. Our guest is the creator of mass control. He's hugely successful in both internet marketing and niche marketing. He's a sought-after copywriter and probably the most in-demand product launch expert online today. Let me give you a couple of examples of those launches. The underachiever system that generated $1 million in 2 days. The serializer method that generated $1 million in 54 minutes. The annihilation method that pulled in $1.4 million in 4 hours. Stompernet that generated a massive $10 million in 1 day. And Pipeline Profits, which did $3.1 million in 24 hours. In this call, you're going to hear about the methods that we use behind the scenes on all those launches, and importantly, how you can apply the same formula in your own promotions to achieve incredible results. He's talking to us today all the way from sunny California. It's Mr. Frank Kern. Frank, it's great to speak to you.
Yeah, hey guys, thanks so much for having me on today. I'm delighted. And it is sunny California for about 30 minutes. I think while we're having the conversation, I'll be watching the sunset. So I got the best of both worlds going on, talking to my marketing friends and watching a beautiful California sunset right over the ocean. Hard to beat.
Wow, sounds nice. Hey, Frank, let's just jump right in here. You know, the term mass control is kind of the focus of this launch here, and that term could quite easily be misunderstood by a lot of people listening, or maybe people who are, you know, looking at the pre-launch or the launch or the sales page. Before we dig deeper here, can you just explain the concept of mass control and explain to everybody listening what makes it such a powerful strategy, and why is it positive and not negative?
I'm really glad you asked that, man. You know, while Simon was introducing me, I was thinking about the word or the phrase mass control, and then he had mentioned the annihilation method launch. And
well, yeah.
So many of these things are like these ominous sounding, you know, like landmine type things, you know, but mass control, I came up with that name really because it invokes curiosity, and it kind of sounds a lot cooler than like you know, very simple marketing that makes you a lot of money, and it's easier to fit on a logo, you know. But essentially, mass control is not about controlling anyone at all, at least not against their will. I think it's almost impossible to control somebody against their will without the use of force or violence or any sort of distasteful stuff like that. So it's certainly not at all really about controlling people. Instead, what mass control is about and what makes it so powerful is that you simply use to your advantage the psychological triggers and ingrained behaviors that your market already has in place and has already had in place, not only their entire lives, but throughout, I would assume, throughout recorded human history. I haven't studied back that far to really check this stuff out. So it's basically selling in a very, very natural environment, almost the exact opposite of what people are used to experiencing as someone who is doing the selling and as someone who's being sold to.
You know, I understand it, and I know Simon does, but I'm glad you kind of put that out in the open, because a lot of people might think of some government control or everybody tied up or going down the line or something. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
The evil master hypnotist or something like that.
Yes, the evil master hypnotist. You know what's funny, man, is that like I've kind of gotten that reputation, which is a little bit weird because I sort of invented that reputation with the name mass control. So now, like, I had a video, and in the video I made a mistake in the spelling, and I said something like, "Oh man, I messed up on this slide, guys. I'm not going to change it because I'm in a hurry, but you know what I'm trying to say here." And there were all these comments back saying, "Oh yes, that was brilliant how you used the wrong spelling on the slide to make yourself appear more normal." And I was like, no, I really did just mess up the slide, you know. But really, I mean, mass control is like, I guess if you want to boil it down to its most basic sense, it's just giving away really good, valuable content that helps people conclude that they want something, essentially. And that's it. And it's all based on the foundation that people already inherently want either what you're selling or they want the end result that what you're selling can provide them. And it's also based on the foundation that what you're giving is good and useful You know, so it's never to be used. It's never intended to be used, and should never be used if you're like doing anything bad or uncool. And it certainly isn't something that you could use to manipulate people into doing things they don't want to do ever.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I guess in a more normal way to put it, I guess, would be maybe education marketing. But that's kind of boring. You know, I suppose nobody pay attention. You know, if it said education marketing or something like that. Whereas mass control, everybody kind of peeks up, hey, what's that? You know, and they get curious, and then once they discover the truth, it's pretty powerful. Yeah.
Well, that's actually part of it. I mean, you kind of just hit the nail on the head, because like remember when I was saying we're using to our best advantage is certain psychological traits that all people have. Well, if you said like most people, the phrase education marketing is extremely boring, and they would say, well, I already know what that means, and that's not for me. Regardless of had they like had any exposure to what we're talking about here at all. But if you say something like mass control, it immediately invokes that sense of this is forbidden, this is borderline scary, possibly dangerous, and you have that curiosity and you have that immediate desire to find out more of what it is. So you use that, it's all about using that kind of stuff in your marketing to get people's attention and help them decide that they want to buy your material.
Well, I think that's cool. I think people. That's right. You're actually using the strategy itself, even in things like the name of the course that you've got out there, and it does, that is very, very powerful. I mean, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while, Frank. I mean, as a copywriter myself, I'd love to know what you think on this. You create some fantastic sales letters. I mean, am I right in thinking that you wrote the StomperNet sales letter?
Yeah, I wrote, I'm trying to remember how that whole StomperNet sales letter came about. I'd have to look at it, but yes, I'm pretty sure that was about 90% me at the last minute. The way that happened was they had a copy team, and the copy team submitted a draft which Andy didn't like at all, and then he was like, dude, will you fix this? And, we had like 24 hours to go before the launch went live, and okay, I'll do it,
The one thing that I want to ask you on that, I've got a slightly more serious question on the back of it, but the headline on StomperNet was, this space intentionally left blank. Now, that is one of my all-time favourite headlines, which sort of smacks in the face a bit of what it's actually saying. But I think it just incredible. And I always wanted to know, was it intentionally left blank, or was it just a master stroke of copywriting that you created that headline?
It was a master stroke of copywriting. Andy Jenkins. Andy Jenkins created it, and I hope this recording never gets out, because I don't want him to hear it, because now someone's going to say, yes, that was great copy, and I hated it. I was like, dude, this is the worst headline ever. I can't stand it. That was in with the first draft before I got hold of it. And by the time I finished writing the sales letter, I didn't have anything left in me to fix the headline. And I was like, well, man, if you like the headline, it kind of works with the way the copy is now. Let's just run with it. And I remember he was joking around. And he was like, dude, I hope this launch really does well, because then I can say that I wrote like the greatest headline ever. And now you've given him fuel. You've given him fuel for the fire, So I'm going to be sure to tell him you said that. He'll love it. I was on the phone with him earlier today, so I'll call him back up and I'll be like, well, you were right. It was a headline. It was. But, in retrospect, that was a great headline, especially considering the whole vibe of the time, and that's like a huge way that mass control works, is you need to really be in constant feedback with your market and understand how they're feeling, what they're going through, and what's going on in their mind, so you can respond, because it's really like a two-way conversation. It's just you're talking to, hundreds of thousands of people. And at that moment in the history of our little community, people were just totally sick of like launches in general, and they were just angry and jaded, and they weren't angry at StomperNet or jaded with StomperNet by any means, but as a whole, they were feeling very frustrated and angry and jaded. So when Andy wrote that headline, and all throughout the launch, actually, we were trying to take an undertone of, we were mocking the entire launch process, and we weren't like trying to hide the fact that we were doing a launch at all, but we were kind of coming out and saying, yeah, we're doing a launch and we know this is silly, but hey, what can you do? We're doing a launch, so hopefully you'll buy our stuff. So they really resonated well with the market, for sure.
I mean, that's it. The question behind that was obviously, you've been responsible for the whole marketing strategies, not just the sales letters in these huge campaigns. I mean, that's got to be, like you say, if you're done for the day before when the sales letter gets written, I mean, that's got to be incredibly stressful. I mean, especially when you have an idea or that you know that there's millions of dollars at stake. For the people listening to this, I mean, I know that there's going to be people listening to this that write their own sales copy. Can you talk us through a little bit of your mindset and the thought processes as you sit down to sort of like start writing a sales letter or planning a strategy? You know, what's going through your mind?
Well, when I have the best results, nothing. Like the best, and this is completely counterintuitive, I know, because lots of people say, well, you need to have all these checklists, you need to do 400 million things before you write the sales letter. Every time I sit there and I like try to analyze it, I screw it all up. But if I'm under a tremendous amount of pressure, which forces me not to analyze it and just to start writing, it's easy. The big trick, I mean, and the huge, big glaring, like, you know, pot of gold in the middle of the desert that people somehow overlook, is that the copy needs to be primarily about the end result people will receive or achieve or whatever after using or consuming or owning whatever it is you're selling to them. And so that has to be like theme one, like the big overall theme, like here is the end result. And then the underlying themes need to be, I know that these are your objections, and I know that if I say that I'm overcoming them, it's going to sound like I'm trying to sell you something, but here's why these objections are going to be overcome anyway. And when you have all that stuff, there's really no magic to it. It's kind of like John Carlton said once when I was talking to him actually about Stompernet. He was like, man, all you got to do is say, here's what I got, here's what it'll do for you, here's what I want you to do next. And I have written that down, you know, and that's pretty much like my big magical checkbook or checklist formula, you know, which is, okay, here's what it is, here's what it'll do for them, here's what I want them to do next. There's oftentimes no need to weave in a lot of extraneous junk in there, especially if you've gone through a launch sequence already with the market, you know, because throughout your entire launch you should be selling them anyway.
Yeah, I think that's, like you say, it's important. I guess on a lot of those big launches, I mean, I found this as well when we did Marketing Main Event 3 back in the summer. I was pretty much annoyed because I'd timed how long it took to read the sales letter as fast as possible, and it was something like 35 minutes, and we started getting orders in after about 3 minutes, and you think to yourself, why did I just spend the last month writing that? And I think that's the power of mass control, isn't it? It's the launch, it's the whole strategy, it's everything as a concept, that when people actually get to the sales letter, they're in a buying state. They're all ready to buy the product.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when I did Serializer, the second batch of Serializer seminars, that class was, I don't remember the percentage, let's say 60% sold out before I even released the sales letter for it, because people would write me and they would say, Frank, it's physically impossible for me to be in front of my computer the day that you're going live. Can I just send you some money? And not wanting to be rude, you know, I naturally said, well, yeah, okay, I certainly wouldn't want to be insulting to you and not take the money. But if done correctly, yeah, you know, mass control will get them in the frame of mind where they're ready to buy. And again, I might end up sounding like a broken record here, but it's all about helping them decide for themselves that they want their product. You know, I really want to make it clear that we're not trying to trick anyone or manipulate anybody into doing anything. It's just, you know, being extremely straight up with people, straightforward, giving them lots of value and showing them exactly why your stuff is going to help them achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve. And it's that process is significantly different from what we experience now. Like if you look at lots of the internet marketing promotions, it's all about like the guru and how great that person is and why you should listen to them and all that stuff. And the bottom line is nobody cares. It's like, is this thing going to work for me? What's it do? You know, is it going to work for me? And okay, what do I need to do now? And that's it. You know, that's what we all think. Right? I mean, that's why, like, people don't read sales letters a lot of times, you know, because they're like, well, does it work or not? Okay, cool. If you prove it, if you can prove that it works, then I'll buy it, right? So that's what this whole process is really all about. And we just do it in a little bit more of a subtle and natural manner.
Yeah, I really like how, you know, you said about the customer, they don't like to be sold because, I mean, everybody's a salesman and a customer at one point in time. if you're a marketer, you also buy things. And, yeah, I don't like being sold either. And whenever I go to a sales page, I read the headline, and then I scroll down, check the price, and read the PS. And that's about it. If it looks interesting, I'll go back and maybe read the sales letter a little bit. But basically, I'm just looking for key points is, do I need this? What's it going to do for me kind of thing? And I think a lot of people maybe when they go to a sales page, they might have some blocks or, maybe they're just automatically thinking, okay, what's this guy going to sell me? Especially if there's a big launch and they get 50 emails about everybody selling the same product. In Mass Control, you talk about the key components a launch needs to be successful. I talk about empathy, why it's so important. And looking at promotions like through a customer's eyes, can you kind of talk us through some of the psychological blocks a potential customer might have that, we need to overcome and how someone can overcome them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. There are three big glaring reasons people won't buy your stuff. And then there's a bunch of little reasons, but like these three big glaring reasons will eliminate, let's say, 80% of the non-buyers out there. It'll help turn them around. And big glaring reason number one is, as painfully obvious as this is that they just don't want it. And that really escapes people. Like, lots of people will come into the marketing world with the product first, market later idea. So, if someone comes out and they say, yes, I just invented this machine that, allows you to make microwaved popcorn out of recycled ping pong balls. It's awesome. I'm going to sell it for $97, and then nobody buys it, and they're devastated, and they say internet marketing doesn't work. And, well, in reality, nobody wants that. Now, that's a silly example, but it can be taken, like a more concrete example might be someone like me. I love internet marketing. I'm a student of marketing on and offline. It's, I've been a hardcore monk-like fanatic disciple of it for the past 10 years almost. And logically, if someone were to release a course on search engine marketing, I would be a prospect for it, like logically. But the truth is, for me personally, I think search engine optimization and all that stuff is painfully boring. So I would not be interested in that because I simply don't want that. You know what I mean? So you really need to be completely in touch with whoever it is you're dealing with. Now, you can't, obviously it's pretty hard to be in touch like with every single person on a subscriber list or whatever, but you can always gauge the theme, the general overall vibe of a subscriber base or of a market really quickly. So that's the big number one is they got to want what you're selling. You got to be selling the right thing to the right people. The second big glaring thing is they have to believe you. Okay, so if someone says, I'm going to sell you this $5,000 report, and it's going to tell you the 3 words that if you use them in succession, people will buy stuff from you no matter what you're selling. Now, see, I would want that.
Yeah,
right? If someone, yeah, I would, but would we believe it? No, I don't think we would believe someone who is making that claim. So we've lost the sale, right? So we know we want that end result, but we just don't believe them. So that's the second one. You've got to get them to believe you, and that's like really where the goal is getting them to believe you, because like you and I sell things on how to make more money, and we have people who don't know us personally yet, who haven't been exposed to our marketing for a long time, don't feel like they know us yet, so they're less likely to believe our stuff, and that's where we lose lots of customers. So if you can get people to believe you, then you're really in good shape. And the third major barrier is that they don't have any money. They just can't buy it, and that has a lot to do with market selection. However, the upside to it, which is, well, they can always get the money if they desire your product enough. So it's like a combination of no money / not enough desire. For example, and this is kind of an unpleasant example to use, but it's the best way I know to illustrate the point. Let's say that my friend had cancer, for example, and the cure is sitting on a table in front of us, and there's a syringe, and all he has to do is hand someone $1 million in cash, and then take the shot and he'll be cured, and it works. Let's just say that we know that it works. We believe it has been proven it works and all that stuff. Well, we don't have the $1 million in cash, so we might have that one problem of, oh, well, they don't have any money. However, that desire would be there enough, so we'd figure out a way to get the $1 million, right? I mean, in some cases, people would rob a bank if they had to get the money to get that cure. So that's the number 3. Not enough money / not enough desire for the product. So they might want it, they might believe you, but they might not want it enough. So that's the third thing that you have to overcome.
That's great. I mean, I think that's you touched on it at the beginning there. You said, people just don't want the product, and that just goes back to for people listening to this call. Do research before you create a product. I mean, in internet marketing, there are certain, shall we say, evergreen subjects, list building, traffic generation, and all those sort of things that just sell and sell. But if you haven't built a product that anybody wants, I mean, I've done this on a number of occasions. I've sort of sat down and I thought, wow, everybody would want one of these, and it turns out it's just been me. So I think that that's really something very important to listen to there. And again, you say it's about desire. They've got to want it enough. We talked a little bit about belief as well, and you've got to prove to people that either the product does what it says it does. One of the things that you talk about in mass control that is a way to get that across, I think, is you talk about sort of creating a character and building backstories into the promotion, into the launch strategy. I mean, as a copywriter, I know how important stories are to a process, but I think the big problem that people face is how they go about creating that story for themselves. It's like, how do they create those backstories? People aren't always confident in telling a story about themselves. I mean, have you got any advice for people listening that they can use to overcome that?
Well, it's to tell the truth in an interesting fashion. All right, so like someone might think, well, my story is very uninteresting or whatever, but if you're talking to a market of people who are rabidly passionate about something and your story is about a product which feeds and fuels that passion and desire, then it's going to be interesting to them. It might not be interesting to you anymore because you lived it, and you might be like, oh, well, you might have a little bit of modesty or self-doubt or anything. So I like to advise people just tell the truth and make it interesting and keep it interesting, and if you can add elements of mystery and intrigue in there or weirdness, like people love weird stuff, so a book about bowling or something, you could talk about how you discovered this technique after you had broken your ankle and you were lying, or you were having to sit in a cast, and you had this weird hobbling approach as you went up to the thing to throw the ball, and you threw it correctly and you hit a strike. Well, that's interesting, right? Because you have this imagery of the guy hobbling up there. He's got the broken ankle for all this time, and it's about bowling, which the market is really, really into. So it's as truth but with interest is the best way that I know how to put that. And the reason stories are so important, like you could actually tell a bad and boring story, but if it's to the right market, it's still going to go over well. So I don't think you need to be Faulkner or Kurt Vonnegut or anything. I mean, the fact of the matter is the way we communicate is through storytelling, not only in the selling environment, but for primarily almost all conversation. Like if you think about it, think about the last time being in a bar or a restaurant or at a party with a group of friends, and look back at the conversation that not only you had with people, but that the entire group as a whole had with each other, collectively and individually. I would wager that it was probably 80% stories. And that could be stories of just people recounting what they did the night before. It could be stories about what friends did. So, a typical story might be like, this is a pretty good restaurant. Yeah, one of my favorite things is the prawns. Oh, yeah, I had this with my girlfriend. I remember we came here this one time, and there was this waiter that was working, and the guy had a gold tooth, and he had his initials in the gold tooth, and my girlfriend and I got in this crazy argument about whether or not that would be cool. Like classic example of someone just immediately going into a storytelling scenario, even unconsciously. It's just the way our brains work. We tell stories. We even tell stories in our minds. Like if you think about it and you replay events that have happened in your past, it almost always gets replayed back to you by your own brain as a story. And some people it gets replayed as a movie. That's the way it works inside my own brain, as I see my past replayed as a movie, with me in it, like not like Star Wars or something. You know, that would be kind of funny, though, wouldn't it? You know, but, you know, it depends on how your brain works, but that's just the way it is. That's the way we're hardwired, and so many people just completely overlook that. So, if you know, mass control is like, let's say, you know, you're standing on the banks of a river, and the sail is at the end of the river where the current's heading. Well, mass control is about just like stepping in the river and just letting the current take you to the sail. You know, and what most people in marketing do is they like go upstream and they like build this bridge over the river, and then they like tunnel under it, and then they get, you know, an airboat to take them and finally get to the sail. And you know, they try to do all this extraneous stuff that's completely unnecessary. If you just go with the way that humans are built psychologically, and you just use that to your advantage, then you're really going to have an easier time. You know, I don't see the point in going through any extra effort. You know what I mean? So that's why stories are so important.
If people listen to this, you should really read Frank's copy, because I mean, you write such great copy because it's in such a conversational tone, and it is just like you sat with a friend in the bar or a restaurant having a conversation, and that's immediately more appealing than the hyped up, you know, big headline, sub-headline, opening paragraph, bullet points, all those things that are not done properly in bad sales letters. And it's engaging with the person as well, isn't it? So the story helps you become engaged. But the way Frank writes copy, please go and look at that, because it's a great style of copywriting that sort of, you know, that works. You know, I mean, I very, very rarely read, you know, huge sales letters, and most people don't either. But Frank's, people just stay glued to the page and, you know, keep scrolling. So, you know, that's a good tip. Go and read Frank's sales letters.
Well, and, you know, they're always, so like I said earlier, it's truth made interesting. So, you know, the sales letter for mass control is that Mafia report. And that's 33 pages. And it's just a story about all these launches that I've done. And it's, you know, it's the true story of the launches, but it's made interesting, talking about how, you know, with StopperNet, we didn't have a sales letter at the last minute because this and that, you know, and I give all the crazy details about that, and I talk about how I didn't even want to do it. You know, I was trying to hide out for the summer and surf, and, you know, I told them to give me some money, hoping that they would just tell me to go away because they didn't know me, and damn them, they took, you know, they said okay, and then I had to do this launch for them. And I talk about how, you know, the annihilation method came about, where, you know, my crazy cousin and I just dreamed up, or really my crazy cousin dreamed up this bizarre scheme. Truth is interesting enough. When you're dealing with people who are extremely into whatever it is that the topic is about. You know, like someone who was not into marketing would find that story incredibly boring and mundane, and would just be miserable trying to read all 33 pages of that. But people who are into selling lots of stuff on the internet and making lots of money as a result are compelled to read it.
I remember a couple years ago, Simon was writing a sales copy for MME2, and it was really good. And I ran it by Mike Long, and he immediately came back and said, "Where's the story?" He's like, "There's no story here." I was like, "Huh? Why do we need a story? We don't need a story." And then he kind of rewrote some stuff and made it into a story, and I showed Simon. I don't know if he's too crazy about it, but I think he had a point about telling stories. And you know, at the time I was just, yeah, maybe it'll work, maybe not. But I mean, Simon's copy, you know, did great. I think I did about $700,000 in sales. But you know, thinking about that in retrospect, you know, stories could really help. I was listening to Evan Pagan too, and he just starts talking, you know, just casually about some story like you were doing. But that's like what he does in his sales process too, which you do that too. And yeah, I think it's really interesting, because if you can get people into your story, they immediately feel comfortable with you, and then they're going to trust you more, you know, and they're going to be like, yeah, this guy's for real. He's not trying to BS me or something, you know, or, you know, just after my money or whatever. And I think that's a really, really good way to do that. And I think it's, like you said, about people talking to each other. Everybody's telling stories, and that's so true. I mean, when a few months ago when I was in the UK at a seminar with Simon, I don't think we once really talked about business too seriously the whole time. We were just kind of telling stories the whole time, and just talking.
And I have lots of blackmail stuff on Jeremy if people want to send me checks on that.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is, like, throughout what you just said, you have two stories. Like, throughout, you're talking about the use of stories. You actually just told the story about having the copy and then running it by Mike, and then you just told the story about the first time you were at a seminar with Simon, and you guys told stories. So you've just illustrated the point perfectly. It's the way natural conversation goes, So it all goes to that metaphor of, like, standing in front in the river's current, just letting it carry you to the sail.
People are always curious. I mean, everybody says, the National Enquirer's crap, it's garbage, I never read it, but why? Why do they have so many sales? Why have they been around for so many years? Because, people like gossip, people like stories. People want a story, I guess, and it's... I don't read fiction. I'm more of a non-fiction type of guy, but I really got sucked into the Harry Potter story about a few years ago, and I just couldn't help it. I started reading it to my kids as a bedtime story, and they fell asleep, and I just kept reading it, and it's just weird because the flow it just got me so into it, and so anybody who can tell a good story, I guess, can really, really do well. Yeah, going into, how people listening, what they can do here to help too, I'm pretty confident everyone listening to this call would like to really replicate your success, and create the kind of launches you pulled off either for themselves, or maybe they're copywriters and they're writing for, somebody else's product, or maybe they have a product they want to launch or something, or they just need ideas. Let's assume someone has a product already, and maybe they've made a few sales, or they're doing okay and nothing spectacular. Where do they need to focus their attention now, and how do they start the process to get to the next level?
Well, it depends on the reason for them not doing anything spectacular, and fortunately there are only a few reasons that could be. First of all, they should be commended on doing something, right? I mean, the difference between making a ton of money and not making any money at all is ultimately just doing a little bit of work, and the people who've made even one sale have already, like, done way just miles and miles more work and have made much more progress than 99.99% of the folks out there. So that's good. But the reason that you might just be kind of getting along and doing okay versus doing really well is only going to come down to a few things. And the first thing would be traffic. So if you got a product and it's selling for a couple $100 and you're not making a lot of sales, well, you might not be getting your message in front of a lot of people. So one thing to do would be to get your message in front of more people, and this is logic, but it is strangely overlooked by lots of folks. So, there are plenty of ways to get traffic. My favorite is pay-per-click search engines. Another favorite of mine, which very few people use, is something called CPM email drops. That stands for cost per thousand, and that's where you can pay email brokers to actually email their lists about your stuff. And this is not spam. I'm not remotely suggesting anybody send any spam or do anything weird. These are reputable email brokers. One that I've had clients use recently with great success is a company called Arcamax, A-R-C-A-M-A-X. However, I wouldn't recommend using any traffic source unless you have good conversion, which is reason number two that someone wouldn't be doing well, is that they're getting the traffic, but their sales materials aren't converting well. So you might get 1,000 visitors a day and only make one sale. Well, if you got your sales conversion up a little bit, you can make 10 or 20 sales, which would, of course, give you a dramatic increase in income. So the best way that I know to improve your conversion from your marketing materials is to focus on the offer. Make sure that the offer is something people want, and even better is to make sure it's something that people feel like they simply could not live without. And then you structure the offer in a way that it would make them feel like they were just dumb not to accept the offer. An example of that would be yes, if you buy this Honda Accord today as a bonus, you're also going to get this Ferrari, and if you buy before lunch, you're going to get the Ferrari and the Lamborghini, right? They want a car, and now you structured it so they would just feel like they were complete idiots because they didn't take the offer. So, I mean, that's a silly example, but you can also do it in your own stuff, especially if you're selling information products. You know, you can stack on more things of higher perceived value, all right? So that's another reason why you might not be getting to where you wanted to go. And then the final reason I'll give is that you haven't positioned yourself properly in the marketplace to be able to charge enough. So like low traffic, low conversion, and low prices, those are the three lows that you can all be repaired relatively quickly, so you can see a tremendous surge in income. And the way to position yourself to be able to charge more and position yourself as a market leader and someone who should charge more is to do pretty much the opposite of what everybody else does. And in fact, I've made a video about this for the Mass Control Promotions, which is not the very next video coming up, but there's 2 videos away for the promotion. But what you do, like for example, let's say we're looking at in the dating market, because you mentioned Evan earlier, Evan Pagan. He owns doubleyourdating.com, right? So if someone's studying that and they say, oh, I want to start selling dating stuff, well, they'd look and they would do some searches on ClickBank, and they'd look in Google and they would see that all the folks who are selling, dating advice type of things are selling ebooks for under $50. So that's what they would do, because that's what everybody else does. Well, what happens is the market gets conditioned to believe that's the maximum amount any product of that sort is going to be worth, is whatever the other guys are charging for it. So if 10 people are selling into that market and they're all under $50, so that market is now conditioned to say, oh well, this is what an ebook about dating is worth. All right. Well, if you want to reposition yourself to make more money, you just do the opposite, and instead of selling the ebook, you repackage your information and put it on a DVD with a manual, and you now sell it for $200. The information can be the same, but it's repositioned differently. It's repositioned against what every single other person that you're competing with does. So now you're somebody new, you're rising above the noise, and you have a higher perceived value, and just by way of charging more, assuming your stuff is good and you're delivering the end result, just by way of charging more, you can often see an increase in sales, because it's our own human nature to believe that if something is more expensive, it must be better. So if you combine expensive plus different, then you are already pulling on 2 psychological strings that make people believe that it must be better. And good Lord, if it really is better, which it should be, right? Then you're really onto something, So if you overcome those 3 L's, you can start seeing pretty good results really, really quickly. And long-term results, these huge launches that I've done, because Mass Control is about so much more than launching. You'll notice that we haven't really talked that much about launching throughout this conversation. That's just like, let's say we have a dozen different assortment of donuts. Well, launching is just one flavor of donuts and the dozen, which would be Mass Control. So on a long-term strategy, if you want to employ launching things, what you need to do is start giving your list really, really good, useful content immediately. And the content should always be something that can stand on its own, even if you weren't selling something, that people could get it and be like, oh, wow, that was really interesting. I'm glad I saw that today. And it should give them some useful information, but it should also lead them to conclude that, man, I would love to use this in conjunction with what other stuff this person could show me. And an example I'll give you is I'm in the middle of launching Mass Control right now. Well, my list, I've recently had 30,000 people now have joined the subscriber list to find out more about Mass Control, and a lot of the folks who are on that list have said, hey, I know Mass Control works, it's obvious, what do I do if I don't have a list? Well, I want to help them consume my product, and I want to provide value to my subscribers, so I made them a video that shows them how to build a list. Now, I'm sneaky for doing that, right? Obviously, I want them to like me, and I want them to feel like they get good content from me, so they'll buy stuff, but I also just overcame a major objection they might have for why they couldn't buy my stuff, which is, well, I don't have a list, so I don't know if this is for me. Well, I just gave them a video that says, okay, here's how you get a list, and now you know how to get a list. Now you can buy my stuff. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's awesome information. I mean, right at the beginning of the call, we talked about StomperNet and how that launch, I think it was it $10 million in a day? I mean, I guess a lot of people listening to that, that sort of figure is just so hard to comprehend, but I mean, it goes back to, I think it was probably John Reese with his $1 million day, set a sort of a target for a lot of marketers out there. But I mean, what do you think is next? I mean, do you think people using the mass control techniques are ever going to beat the $10 million in a day? I mean, we all sort of think nothing should be impossible. But I mean, what do you think? I mean, where is this thing going at the moment?
Well, I mean, we're really a bunch of amateurs. If you look at I guess in terms of marketing, we're not. But if you think, first of all, StomperNet was 18.3. And that was in a 24-hour period. So their first day the cart was open, it was open for less than 24 hours. It did like 10 million or something, and then they opened it again a couple days later for a period of time. Both periods of time equaling 24 hours when they were combined. It was 18.3 million bucks.
Wow.
But if you look at like because these are big internet marketing launches, right? And our community's tiny. Like to us and the folks who are listening, it seems like we're part of this really big world, but the other 99.9% of the Earth's population have no idea what we're talking about. Like no one would know what StomperNet was or is outside of the internet marketing community. No one would know about Mass Control or Frank Kern or anything. So I think first of all, I think someone will eventually beat it in our community, sure, because it's just the nature of progress. But I think that if like a record label were to start using this stuff, or good Lord, imagine a car manufacturer started using this type of thing, or a major publisher started using it, then you would see that record absolutely shattered, simply because of the reach. I don't remember the size of the list specifically for StomperNet, but I think the prospect list was only around 50,000 people, and I could be wrong, but it's somewhere around that. It wasn't like a ton. But imagine there are businesses out there that have internal house lists of several million people, and they just don't use this stuff. But if they did, they'd shatter the record immediately. And the only reason they don't use it is because they don't know it.
Yeah, I mean that's true, isn't it? I mean, you look at some of I guess like you were saying, the internet marketing is only a small community on the global scale, but you've used the same sort of techniques outside of internet marketing. It's not just the make money, get rich sort of marketplace that this works in. And I think you cover some of that in the Mass Control course. But, I mean, the question that I'm sure that everybody listening to this call really wants to know is, you hit one of these big launches and it's like you knock it out of the park. I mean, just tell us what that feels like emotionally, because I mean, I'm sure that's going to help people to sort of like get into that state of mind and to sort of like picture that sort of that feeling. It's going to help them get there, I think. So I mean, what's it like when something like that happens?
It is really, really good. It's right up there. Well, it's not right up there, but it's I would say maybe like half as cool as having children or something, because nothing's as cool as having your kids, right? Yeah. But it's comparable, respectfully so, in scale to having a child be born or something, in terms of just the awe that you feel. Like, I remember when StomperNet happened, I woke up extremely early, like it was Christmas, and I think that they were going live at, I don't recall the time, I think it was 6 in the morning our time, or 7 or something. I got up and I went over to Mike's house. He'd come to La Jolla for a while during that launch, and I went over there, and it was like Christmas. I was like, come on, get up, guys, the car's going to go over. We got to say, this isn't even my business. Like, I could, even if it made $4, it wouldn't have really mattered to me. I just charged them this obscenely small amount of money to write the copy, and again, because I didn't really know that they would take me up on it. I didn't really want to do it, but it's like Christmas times $4 million, I guess. And to me, it's not necessarily even the money. It's just about like, it's like a concert. So if you could imagine like you're Aerosmith or something, and you're walking out on stage and all these people are going nuts. That's kind of like what a launch is, but you don't actually see the people. But you can look in real time and you can see the money coming in. And you can be like, wow, there's, oh my God, we just hit 100,000. Oh, wait a minute, there's 150. I mean, yeah, I've had instances where by the time you refresh the stats, it went from 100,000 to $300,000 in that several second period of time. And it's just, that's pretty much what it's like. And for me, the money, the financial ramifications have come in second. Like that settles later after it's all over, and it's like, oh my God, we just pulled in X amount of $1 million today. That is absolutely insane. Can you believe it? And then I'll go home and I'll be like really freaking out, and I'll be like, honey, I'll go to my wife, like, we just did all this money. She's like, great, we need to get some ketchup and ketchup and some baby wipes. Do you mind? Will you go real quick down to the store and get some ketchup and baby wipes? I'm like, yeah, okay, So it's really cool though. I mean, it's doing it for me is just learning this stuff to the point that I have. I still think I still consider myself a student of it. Even though I've pioneered this whole mass control thing, I've kind of taken a lot of disciplines and put them together into what's working right now specifically for the internet. But I still think I'm a student of it too. But just what I've figured out so far is what it can do for your life, and your lifestyle is amazing. A couple years ago, we lived in Georgia. We were in an area that was pretty much economically depressed and filled with racial tension, and really wasn't that great. And over the course of 2 launches to my small list of under 9,000 people, I brought in $1 million to me, and was able to take my family and move them to a beach community in Southern California, where we wake up every day and look straight out at the ocean, and not like we're up on a big mountain looking over the ocean. It's like, I wonder if I can throw a tennis ball and hit that guy in the Speedo. That we're that close to it. And that the long-term effects of being able to do that are really, really good. Like now I know my children are living somewhere very safe, and they're surrounded by natural beauty, and they can grow up in this environment. And, if you think about, well, what kind of effect is that going to have on them long term? What kind of effect is an active and healthy lifestyle going to have on me personally long term? Because I learned this stuff, made a bunch of money, and was able to move out here and maintain this lifestyle. You could go on forever, but it's definitely worth pursuing, or has been for me, and the people that have used it, it's really worked out well for them as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And when you mentioned, it's like being in like Aerosmith come out and all the fans out there for you. Like when you're online, you don't see anybody, but when you can see the orders coming in, those are real people. If you can imagine a line of people, buying a ticket or something, or buying a pass to your product, I guess that's how you could look at it. And I mean, when we did MME3 last year, it was kind of like that, because I mean, we had people email us going, hey, I took a day off of work just so I could get up early and buy your product and be one of the first people, and things like that. And when people tell you that kind of stuff, it kind of makes you think, like, wow, you feel good, knowing that somebody really respects you enough, or really looks up to your business enough to really want your product that bad. On one hand, it's kind of scary, because if your product doesn't meet their expectations, they're going to come down on you. But on the other hand, it makes you feel good to know that you're doing something to really help people out. That's cool. And like you said, it all comes down to your family in the end, providing a better lifestyle. That's pretty cool.
But, and the people, and this is going to sound corny, but it's really true, and it's not only been proven true in my business, but in other people's that I've observed and helped work with, is that the people who come into your little world through doing one of these launches, or even, it's not even about launches, just through building a business where you create very happy people who want to do business with you repeatedly, that you really do have like this family type atmosphere. I came across a serializer student the other day, and just to look at this person, it was a couple, and to know that they by no means were having a hard time pre-serializer. Like, you can't, right, go buy a $10,000 seminar. But they as a result of that, they took their business, and it was doing around $70,000 a month after applying serializer strategies to it. And I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, yeah, we really don't do anything anymore. My biggest dilemma right now is to figure out whether I should go to South America first or go to Australia first, sir. I recommended Australia because it's their summer down there right now, and it's such a nice place to go. But if you follow the rules of always give really good stuff and always help people, the money, as dumb and cliched as it sounds, the money becomes almost like a secondary benefit to this whole thing. It's like, yeah, okay, I got a lot of money, that's great, but I just met someone who had cancer, and because of their business that I was able to show them how to build, they were able to feed their family while they were undergoing chemotherapy instead of like being financially strapped and endure that kind of stuff. Like, that's way cooler than the financial.
Yeah, that's neat. The big picture. Excellent information here, Frank. You've revealed a lot more than we could really have asked. We've covered a lot of great stuff in this call, and just everybody listening is going to benefit, I'm sure. Just before we finish up, can you give the listeners just because it's a lot to take in, maybe just some bite-sized math control tips that they should remember today and just sink into their brain so that this can really work for them?
Yeah, I'll give you the big number one, which is always let the prospect be in control or believe he is. Nobody wants to be convinced of anything, right? But if your prospect convinces himself that he wants your stuff, not only is it a more powerful position, but it's also a decision that he will own and he will defend. So if your prospect convinces himself that your stuff is good and that he wants it, someone could come along and try to convince him that you're a terrible person and that the minute he buys your product, his left arm will fall off. He will try to argue with that person and say, nope, actually this product is great and I can't wait to buy it, and my arm is not going to fall off because he has decided for himself in advance that he wants it. That's the way the brain works. That's just how we're wired. When we make a decision for ourselves, we will defend that decision. We own it. It's ours, and we'll stick to it even if we're proven to be wrong. This is completely different from what other people teach you. Other people teach you that you need to convince the product that they have to have your stuff, or else they're going to have all these horrible repercussions or whatever. And yes, that works, and it's worked over time. It certainly has not. It is not nearly as powerful as what you can achieve when your prospect convinces himself that he wants your stuff. So the way you do that is you give him excellent content of value that allows him to achieve incremental portions of his desired end result. For example, I'll use mass control. Mass control works. One of the ways it works is when you have a mailing list, you can use mass control to literally drive them into this near psychotic buying frenzy where they just throw money at you. Well, I can, by giving people incremental glimpses of that end result, I can make them decide that I'm telling the truth and decide that they want to buy my stuff. And one way I did that was I released some content that showed them how to get a list. So people put that information to use, and they start building a list already way before my stuff goes on sale. So I gave them an incremental bit of what it is they're already after. I gave them one piece of the pie. Because I'd given that to them, now they really want it. Like, oh my gosh, I just got some subscribers. I've got a list. They're actually doing something. I wonder what I do with them now. So I gave them that incremental piece of what it was that they wanted. It's kind of like if we have a course and you're teaching people how to write their own book, well, if you give away some content that shows them how to design the cover of the book, well, you just gave them an incremental piece of the desired end result, which is their own book. You just gave them their cover. They just made their own cover. Now they're already psychologically committed to this end result. They're with you along for the ride. So if you do that, then you will prosper, and you will sell lots of things, and you will be dealing with very happy people who do not resent you at all for contacting them, and who really, frankly, would wish that you'd write them more. Then they would wish you would come out with more stuff, and they would want you to sell them more things. And if you really do a good job of it, you'll have situations where people will call your office and say, here's my credit card number, just charge me and send me whatever your new thing is. I don't even care what it is. Just tell me what it is. And I know this because I do that to several people myself, and people do it to me.
Thank you so much for sharing all this with us today. It's been fantastic. I think I've probably made about 3 pages of notes myself while we've been talking here. Thank you very much.
Well, good. All right, I enjoyed it,
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Frank. And everybody listening, I'm sure is going to get a lot out of this, and really appreciate it.
Cool. All right, thanks everybody listening. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.